let's start with the plan. $4.5 million, not an insignificant amount of money for you guys. What are the hopes for that funding?
Well, the hopes for that is we'll start with it's going to be a plan to act. So the first thing is we have to develop a very solid plan. We had some thoughts on what we could spend the money on. We had some thoughts on some, revitalizing our marina, revitalizing our Main Street, and working on a housing project for market level housing. And that was our ideas. But now the plan to act really comes in place where those plans have got to be solidified locally. And then we move those plans to the state to be vetted. Which ones would they actually support out of the $4.5 million? Because they will be the ones who eventually, at the end of the process, give us the green light. Which ones which don't go.
Mm-hmm. Which is pretty similar to the DRI process.
Yeah, exactly. It is and it's just on a smaller scale.
Yeah. So for those who haven't been to Montour Falls, haven't been to your downtown, describe what it is like. Describe the sense of what people get when they visit Montour Falls and what they're experiencing. So I think it might help some folks understand why the state is saying we entrust you with $4.5 million in grant money.
Montour Falls, it's really a conversion of natural resources and assets, that's going to be, again, supports our commitment to a sustainable future. And when we look at our downtown area, and I always call it our midtown because it's in the middle of my village. So my midtown area is the most impressive part is the waterfall. It is the most impressive part. And that is a corridor, that's going to bring and does bring people to other parts of the Main Street. So just recently, we were able to have a brewery open on our Main Street. Again, that's a draw from the waterfall, I believe. And then again, we just had a reopening of a pub restaurant now called Althea's open on our Main Street. And a lot of our community members have been very excited about having a local place that they can go and get a small meal and meet with friends. Also, we do have a couple of parks besides the waterfall. We have a couple of small parks on our Main Street, which is very important because we can have gatherings and community events there. And I always go back and think of how many people have been married before the falls at Chicago Falls, and say that's where they started their lives together. So that is great. It's part of that unique opportunities. And it's part of the Catherine Valley Trail. And the Queen Catherine Marsh. We have trails that go through there, and they intersect on my midtown. When we look at where do you start? Well, usually they start somewhere around the midtown of the village. They work their way over to our marina and camping ground. That's where we're going to see the wetland trails are going to be, or the Catherine Valley Trail, which transects right through the center of town. And that's just exciting as well. And we've been also a great spot for some festivals and some other events. We now have, we have the Fall Festival or our Harvest Festival. We're very well attended. And in the beginning of the year, the Montour Falls Fire Department has their field days. That grounds isn't just there for them. Many times throughout, our farmers market is there, and we have people who will go there and maybe offer a chicken barbecue, or they'll want to put on an event. The hospitals put events on at grounds as well. So we've got pavilions and things for them to be under shade. So that's exciting as well.
I'm curious, what do you think? Obviously, Montour Falls is clearly a community that has a good plan in place, and that is definitely something that we've seen the state likes. They like to see villages and smaller communities that have their ducks in a row, so to speak. But walkability is another factor, a common thread, it seems, between all of these communities across central New York and the Finger Lakes and Southern Tier that are getting state grant money to revitalize downtown. How much do you think the walkability factor in Montour Falls helped you guys with this particular effort?
I think it was a points in our direction, points to support us, and we're going to continue, working on walkability. We've just put in about, with the help of the state, and when they rebuilt the State Route 14 224, we now have a sidewalk that goes from the Human Services Building all the way to the campground and marinas, and we have sidewalks on both sides of Route 14 and on 224, and we're continuing that process. I have one street which will be completed in the building of 2023 construction year. We will have a completely new sidewalks and curbs going from College Avenue all the way to Genesee Street, which is one long path. And I was just talking to someone today that I want to see that every available pathway to the center of our village has new sidewalks or improved sidewalks. And if it's done through this grant of the 4.5 million, the New York Forward, or I'm going to do it through another funding source in even our general fund, because I do have money set aside in our general fund for sidewalk rehabilitation.
Very cool. When it comes to infrastructure, where do you guys fall on that scale? I know it's something that a lot of smaller towns and villages are thinking a lot about in terms of water and sewer and things like that. Is that something that's also on your guys' radar as you look forward into the coming years?
Actually, a lot of things we've springboarded from an infrastructure process. We have relined and improved about 85% of just our sewer lines alone in Montour Falls, and made some significant improvements in our water and our interconnects for sewer to property. We have cameraed every pipe in the village that I know of. We've spent a considerable amount of money going in that direction. We know where we have some issues that have to be addressed, so that plan is in place. The engineering thoughts are there. Now, to expand, that's one of the goals I have. We have a couple places in our community that are not connected to our sewers utility, and that's something I'd like to see. We can expand to those areas, but that's below ground. And New York Forward is not discussing anything below ground. It's all above ground. But to get there, we did show that we've made a significant investment in our infrastructure. And what a lot of people don't see that when you come through any village, any community, is what are you walking or driving on? And in Montour Falls, I remember one year, I think we replaced some valves that hadn't been replaced in over 30 or 40 years. And we were able to get those all replaced and reduce the amount of either clean water, or potable water leaking into the ground, or anything entering the system and going to the sewer system that we didn't need to process.
So what's next in this process here with the Forward grant? 4.5 million now, I would assume the public input or something along those lines, the community is going to start to come together here?
Yes, in the next couple of weeks, I will get some direction from the state, and actually, for lack of a better term, a project manager from the state will be assigned to Montour Falls. And if you're familiar with the DRI, that's what we're going to start with, and then the process of a community committee made up of people within the community, and then we'll take that and go to public input through town hall meetings. We may put out questionnaires or polls to see what they would like to see, and then we're going to boil that down to what will fit within the New York Forward parameters. And of course, at that point, it goes forward to the state for their approvals.
It's exciting stuff, an exciting time for the village of Montour Falls. Mayor, while I have you, I have my last question here. What's the biggest challenge you see for villages across the board? You're running a village. What's the biggest challenge you think villages have to contend with over the next handful of years to keep themselves, in the mix and competing for long-term residents?
One of the largest things I have personally come across is when we apply for a grant, and it's exciting to apply for a grant, and it's exciting to get a grant. Managing that grant and the steps necessary and the personnel hours that has to be invested just in one grant. We've been very fortunate. My foresight was to get a grants administrator on staff. And without that grants administrator, last year I was managing 14 grants. And for a small village to have 14 grants on the table, one clerk or a clerk and a half, even a half-time clerk, but many communities only have a part-time employee in their office because we're so small, they would not have been able to accomplish that task. We know it would have been daunting. And I was very fortunate to put somebody in a position to be a grants administrator and to administrate that. And that's one of the biggest, hardest things we find when we start looking for, funding from outside sources. And the next thing was, we're coming out of the COVID era and looking at sustaining our employees for the future. Is no secret. Wages are a big question now on how you compensate your employees and how much a community can afford to compensate. And it's all what the taxpayer can bear. And that's the biggest challenge I'm looking right now as I'm looking at my next budget is what can the taxpayer bear? And the pain is on a daily basis, even our energy bills, our insurance costs, food, it's all gone up. And as a village, we all cooperate with funding our community. The village's electric bills gone up. Its energy costs have changed, and all the other things that we're experiencing at home is really being amplified at the village. Anyway, my local government level.